Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're gonna do a little retro show and tell. I've got an AR here fitted with a carry handle and one of my older optics on here. This is an Adaball. At what point, I probably had about 12 of these. I used to use these a lot in training people. This is the only one that's left now. I think I basically sold them all off, and I pretty much have upgraded all my red dots to hollow suns, okay? I've done a couple of videos on ARs with carry handles. I did one where I talked to you guys about using the range drum. I did another one where I had this scope fitted on top of the carry handle, right? So this carry handle was the reason why it was put there. It had a hole over here. The reason why it was called a carry handle is so it would carry your optic, okay? From what I hear, what I've been told, you know, back in the day when they had M16s and everything was fitted with a carry handle, if a drill instructor saw you carrying your M16 by the carry handle, he chewed you out pretty good, okay? So carry handles were strictly for carrying an optic, not for you carrying the gun, okay? I took this AR over here out to a range where I was, I had this scope 0 to 100 yards. I took it out to 300 yards. And what I found is that this range adjustment over here was just completely off, the reticle is just a plain duplex, so I don't have mills or mill dots or anything, so I can hold over. So given that the range drum was off and I don't have like anything to hold, any dots to hold on, I decided let me take this off and let me try something different. So luckily this scope did come with a Picatinny rail that would fit into that carry handle slot where I could put the optics. So I dug up this Adaball here, I put it on there. Now, even though this may look a little bit weird, it is actually centered over the ejection port, right? It looks like it's sitting forward, but it's just because of, you're not used to seeing an optic on top of a carry handle. You do want it to be, you don't want it to be too far back, especially on one that's an older style like this, where you have a dial and you got a battery compartment here, and then you got these covers here, because this is really thick, right? This case over here, right? The casing that holds the glass is thick, so you need it to be a little bit forward, so that what happens is your right eye looks through the glass, your left eye is seeing past it. And what happens is this kind of disappears, not too well, right? Nowhere, like with this one over here, this is a hollow sun. You can see how this is a lot thinner, right? There's aren't stuff that's sticking up. So with this, when I come up, like I hardly notice the ring of the, of the optic. My eye sees past it. All I see is my target with the circle dot on it. Okay, so this is a much better design. This is also $300 plus, about $300 compared to the $100 that I was paying for this. And at the time, this was pretty good for $100. At the time, circle dots were just starting to kind of catch on a little bit. Hollow was just starting to put them out. So the way I would use this is, because I had a dot only, I would just crank it all the way up, right? So this was like nuclear bright. We'll get behind the glass a little bit. So right now, let's see, there you go. So I would make this as bright as possible, because I didn't have that circle dot, that 65 mm circle, to drive me to the center. So I would make it as bright as possible to help me pick up the dot and get it on target as fast as possible. Now with this setup over here, because it's sitting on top of the carry handle, I don't have the front sight post as a reference point, because now this is a removable carry handle, and eventually, within a couple of months, I took off the carry handle completely, and I mounted this optic directly onto the upper receiver with a riser, right? In which case, which is a much better way to do this. Again, this is just for retro nostalgia, when I mounted the optic, basically lower, then the dot would sit right on top of my my front sight post here. And what I would do is I would use the front sight post as a reference point, right? So back in the day, I would prefer ARs that had a fixed front sight post because this was a reference point. Basically, I would anchor the stock to my face, and as soon as it came up, I would find this, right? And then my dot would just be on top of it. So I didn't even have to crank it up that high, right? So I could conserve the battery a little bit because I had that front sight post as a reference point. And what I would do is I would have a rear flip-up sight, which I would just keep folded down and out of the way. Okay, so I was just using this as a reference point, and dot was on it. That was a time when I was using these type of optics where it was like, you know, half the time, like every time I would go to take out this AR, it was kind of like a 50-50 if the battery was going to be working or not, because these optics did not have auto shut off, and it was really easy to forget to turn them off and run out the battery. So you really needed iron sights on an AR with these older optics. Okay, nowadays I don't even, like on this gun over here, I don't even put iron sights on it, right? Because that's a solar powered with a battery backup. I know that every time I pull this out of safe, I know this is going to be working. Okay, so I don't even bother to put iron sights on this. And that's only possible because of the improvements that Holosun did. But there was a time when I really needed those iron sights because there was a 50% chance that I was going to be using the iron sights because the battery was dead. So let's talk a little bit more about, again, I'm kind of like picking this up now after almost, the last time I shot this was maybe 10 years ago. First of all, like I took this out to 100 yards, and this is normally a rifle that shoots 2 inches or better. With this optic, I was hitting like 4 and 5 inches, 6 inches. And the reason is because the dot, right? Even when I put it on a very low setting, I had it like on brightness level 2. When I look through this, I still kind of, because I do have a little bit of astigmatism, and I do kind of see like a little bit of a starburst, or like basically I wasn't seeing a crisp dot. Same eyes on the Holosun, just because better glass, better electronics, better image. On this, I see, with the Holosun, I see a crisp dot. Okay, so interesting thing there is, just today I realized, having, going back and shooting this older optic, I had just assumed that, my shooting abilities have just gotten better from my experience. But today I realized that there's also another factor. Part of the reason why I shoot so much better today versus 10 years ago is because I'm shooting better optics. Okay, with these older optics, I was not getting that crisp dot, or that crisp point of aim. So the same gun that today with a different optic I can shoot like 2 inches and better, sometimes even 1 inch on these palmettos. With this optic, I'm getting like 4 inches, right? Just because of that dot is not crisp. It's a big starburst. So that's interesting. That only became clear to me today. Okay? Having picked this up again, there's just so much stuff on there. The big dials, the covers, the battery compartment, and part of the reason why I gravitated towards this optic some 10 years ago is because I like the fact that back then I liked the idea that it would take a AA battery, because I'm like, oh, that's convenient. I can find it in any store. I had not gotten used to this idea of the 2032 batteries, right? I didn't think I'd be able to find them easy. Nowadays I have a stockpile of like 50 of them. But 10 years ago, I didn't know how easy I was going to find them. It was like a new idea to me, these little disc batteries. So I gravitated towards optics that would just take the standard AA batteries. But again, that adds a lot of, bulk, basically a lot of crap to the gun, so that when you come up, you see all this stuff, right? You got a large case here, and then on top of that, you got dials, and you got covers, and you got the battery compartment. So that's all stuff that's going to basically get in your way. These modern Holosuns are like way better. There's just so there's just so much little obstruction here. You know, basically, it's the glass goes almost to the wall of the optic, basically. So when you come up with both eyes open, this kind of fades out. All you see is like the world with a circle dot on it. Versus with this, even with both eyes open, when I come up, I'm seeing all this stuff that's around it. Okay, so that's interesting. I had kind of forgotten about that, right? Because I haven't shot this, like I said, in almost 8 to 10 years. I kind of forgot that issue. Okay, so on the one hand, this is the housing and all the other crap around it makes it bigger, and it's an obstruction. On the other hand, the dot is more of a starburst. Now, part of that is my eyes. I mean, I have like a slight stigmatism. However, with the Holosuns, that's not an issue. I mean, I see a crisp dot with this, whereas I don't see a crisp dot with the Atterball. Again, it's a difference of $200, right? This is a $300 optic. This is a $100 optic. But it served a really important purpose at a very important time, because, you know, back in, I don't know, 2010, okay, this was, you know, red dots on guns were kind of like still, I'm not gonna say experimental, because they had been out for a few years, but they weren't like completely, like, not everybody completely believed that this was the way, that this was the future. Okay, today, all ARs pretty much, unless you're trying to go like, you know, do some type of a retro setup, right, with carry handle, pretty much all ARs today have either a red dot or a prism scope or a variable scope on them. But everybody acknowledges that you shoot better with optics. Okay, I don't, and look, I shoot pretty good with iron sights, right? But I shoot better with optics. Okay, so yeah, you got to be a good shooter. Your fundamentals have to be there. But if you've got better equipment, it will allow you to, you know, extend your skills even further. Okay, so back in like 2010, it was kind of debatable, like, are optics on guns worth having? It. A lot of people were saying, nah, it's, you know, it's a gimmick. You know, learn to use the iron sights. Iron sights are it. You know, So back then, what I did is I bought like a cheap $20 Amazon optic, right? And I threw it on, I think I threw it on a Ruger 1022, right, on the rail. And I just, you know, basically I started having some women shoot it, and they loved it, right? So my experience with rifles prior to putting optics on them is about 50% of the women that I put on guns would kind of lose interest, right? The idea of lining up the sights, rear sight, front sight, line it up like this, you know, put it under the target, focus on the front sight, you know, about 50% of women would lose interest in it, right? And a lot of men too, right? You know, so when I put even a cheap $20 optic on a Ruger 1022, all of a sudden it's like they loved it. Like I had like 99% of women wanted to shoot the gun, right? They wanted to shoot the rifle. They had no interest in the pistol, which had iron sights, right? Because back then, I only, you know, none of the pistols were, you know, you couldn't even buy a pistol, right? That would have a that would take a red dot, right? So, or even have a cut for a red dot back then. So I think it was I started off with the $20 one from Amazon. Then I went to the Bushnell, which was like $50, and I put that on the ARs, and women loved shooting ARs with this red dot, with this $50 red dot, right? And you know, they would get into it. They would tell me that they all of a sudden they wanted to go buy ARs, right? They wanted to become gun owners. They were interested in more training. So I'm like, I don't care what is being debated on the internet. I can see for myself that beginners love this, right? And my goal, the reason why I became an instructor, is so that I can bring more people over to our side. I want to take non-gun owners and turn them into gun owners. And this was clearly a tool that would help me get that done. So right there, all of my ARs all got red dots. Okay, they were all Bushnells at the time. Problem with the Bushnells was that on a bright day, you couldn't see it well. It just didn't get bright enough. So I started looking around again for. I mean, Holosun did exist at the time, and I wasn't completely, I wasn't sold on this idea of a $300 optic. I'm like, it seems a little crazy. You know, I don't know if this is, you know, I wasn't sure that this was going to be the way forward. I'm still in the experimental phase here, you know, testing it out with people. So I went to the Adaball, which was $100, and this was bright. Okay, this was bright. Women could see this in the daytime, right? They loved shooting it. A couple of things I did not like. Like I said, the housing was big, so it was a little bit of an obstruction. Other thing that I did not like was if you look over here, you see this basically the screw that goes through here. Well, it's exactly where the dial is, right? So come on this side. See that little screw right there that comes through? Well, that's basically when you turn your dial, that basically rips your finger off, rips your finger open over here. So this kept ripping my finger open, so that's the other thing I didn't like. But the most annoying thing about this is that every time I would go to the safe to pull out one of these guns, right, with the optics on it, it was a 50-50 if it was going to be working, because maybe I forgot to turn the battery off the last time I used it. So half the time it wouldn't be working because of the battery, right? Battery was dead. So at that point, I'm like, this is annoying as hell, right? I need something that has some serious battery life here, because obviously this is working now, right? I can see that women love shooting this. Everybody's loving this, right? Even the guys love shooting this, right? You know, I mean, forget about the guys that, you know, the traditionalists, right? We're talking about the beginners, new people coming into the game, because we're trying to get new people into this, right? Trying to grow our ranks. The new guys coming into this, they're shooting these red dots and they're loving it. So then I was like, okay, you know what? I think these $300 Hollisons, let's buy one, okay? Listen, within a year, every single rifle had a Holosun solar power with a battery backup on, okay? Like every single one. I mean, I've got boxes of these things. You know, like I don't mean boxes. Like I've got like boxes full of boxes that's how many I've bought of these things. So you know, 100% convinced. The Holosuns took care of my problem. Solar powered with a battery backup. Now, anytime I go to my safe, I pull this up, I know it's going to be working. It's going to be working. I don't even bother putting backup sights on these guns anymore, because I just know they're going to be working, right? It's just a non-issue. It's going to be working. Whereas when I was using this one over here, I had to have the backup sights on the gun, because I didn't know if the optic was going to be working, and I didn't know if I had spare batteries, even though I try to keep spares. Now, the nice thing about this setup over here, it does have, this carry handle does have a pass-through sight. Now, let me open up this gun, and I'll show you guys what I mean. So I'm going to crank this. There you go, it's bright enough you can see it. All right, so when you look through the glass, right, there's your dot, okay? But then if you look underneath it, right, you can see your iron sights, right? You see how you match up your iron sights? So you've got the benefit of both iron sights and your dot. Now, the only issue with this particular setup, put this back together, is in order to use my iron sights, you know, basically I gotta take the normal stance where my cheek is, you know, on the stock. In order to get to the optic, I have to raise my head. Basically, I gotta put my jaw on the stock. All right, so basically I gotta shift my head up and down, which is the reason why within a couple of months I took off the carry handle and I mounted the optic on the riser directly onto the upper receiver. And then I ran it like that for many years, right? Until I started getting into the flat tops, you know, into the railed uppers. I ran it like that for many years, and the way that worked is it worked out pretty good, because then I would fold down the rear sight, and then I would just use the front sight as a reference point, right? So with the rear sight folded down, when you would come up, you would basically look for your front sight post, and your dot was like right over it, okay? Now, with this type of a setup on top of the carry handle, that's not going to work, because this is too high. Your front sight post is sitting too low. But again, like I said, this is a retro video. I'm kind of explaining you guys how I got to where I'm at, you know, with all my ARs pretty much looking like this today. You know, basically just no backups, just the dot. And part of the reason why I stopped bothering with the flip up sights. Aside from the fact that these optics just don't fail, right? I find that I put it's convenient for me to be able to put a magnifier on the back of this so I can shoot at distance. And here's the thing: using up this space over here for a rear flip up sight that's never going to be used. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you can put a magnifier on here, which you will use, right? So I'd rather use the space for the magnifier. So that's why, I took off the flip up sights altogether. I mean, I got like tons of them. I got a whole bag full of flip up sights. I can always put them on there if I want to, but on a day-to-day basis for training people, I mean, I run the guns like this, So I don't put more stuff on the gun than I need to have on it, and if I'm not going to be using something, I just take it off, right? I got away, there was a time when I was like, I want to put as much stuff on the gun as I think I might possibly need. So I wanted to, initially my mentality, like many years ago, was like, let me prepare for every possible contingency. Put a light on the gun, put flip up sights on the gun, it just made the gun heavier, okay? Now it's like I just set up the gun to run as light as possible, and if I know I'm going to be using a light, I take the light out of my pocket. I just use a pistol light. I just mount it right over here on top of the gun. If I think I'm going to be shooting at distance, take the magnifier out of my pocket, put it on the back over here. If it's getting dark, I'm not going to be using the magnifier. Take the magnifier off, keep the gun as light as possible. All right. So I've gotten away from the philosophy of put as much shit on the gun as possible in case you might need to use it. And now my mentality is put only the stuff on the gun that you'll be using, and put all that extra stuff in a bag, right? And if you need to put on the gun, you can always put on the gun at a later point. So that's where my mentality is with that. So there it is, guys. It was interesting shooting this after having not shot this for so long. One of the interesting things is like I said, this gun, I know shoots 2 inches and better. When I shot it with today, I was hitting like 4 and 5 inch groups, and the reason is because of that starburst. Because the dot on this is not as crisp. Even when you dial it down, it's not as crisp. There's still a little bit of a starburst. If you have astigmatism in your eye, it's you're gonna see a starburst. Whereas with this, even with a little bit of astigmatism that I have, when I pick this up, I see a crisp dot. So that was interesting. And like I said, I used to think that I've just become a much better shooter over the years as far as shooting at distance. But I think a lot of that today I'm realizing that a lot of that has to do with just better optics, better equipment, allowing me to focus on, a more crisp dot. That also has allowed me to become a better shooter. And the only reason I would have known that is I wouldn't have known that unless I pulled out this old setup, set this up retro the way I used to have this set up, and I can now see how I shoot this with this optic versus how I shoot with that optic. So, interesting stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to add this because I was talking about how the optics on rifles, there used to be a time when when I would try to train women, I would probably lose about 50% of women. Like about 50% of them would kind of just lose interest. As soon as I put a red dot on it, almost like 95 to 90%, 99% of women were interested. They wanted to shoot the guns. They had no interest in pistols, right? They didn't like the whole idea of lining up the sights. As soon, like 3-4 years ago, when I started putting optics on pistols, now all of a sudden women want to shoot pistols, right? So they want to shoot the rifles and then they want to shoot the pistols. So if your goal is like my goal, which is basically to recruit more people to our side, to get as many people on our side as possible, approaching training people with the traditionalist point of view, learn to use the iron sights, that's not going to be very successful because you're going to lose a lot of people. You start off with the optics, which they're going to like, they're going to take it, and then afterwards, once you get them into shooting, down the road, you can go back and teach them how to use iron sights and get all retro with them and all that stuff. Okay, but when you're training people for the first time, my advice is jump straight to the thing that they're gonna like doing and they're gonna enjoy doing, and that's gonna make them want to do it more. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon.